I'm April Nowicki, Associate Editor of Modern Distribution Management and MDM.com. Welcome to this month's Executive Briefing. In this month's episode, Editor Janelle Selton-Holtmeyer talks with Toby Mack, President and CEO of the Energy Equipment and Infrastructure Alliance, an association representing the shale energy supply chain, including supply chain companies, their trade associations, and labor unions in Washington, D.C. Toby talks about the role of the EEIA in the changing energy market of the U.S. and why regulation of the industry should be state-based rather than federal. He also talks about why it is so important for distributors and manufacturers to be involved in these issues today. In our 7 Minutes With segment, Janelle talks with Angela Rodenberg, Marketing Director for Vancouver, British Columbia-based Redwood Plastics. Redwood Plastics is one of our 2014 market movers and was selected because of the company's focus on engaging their customers on multiple platforms, including social media and blogs. Angela shares why the company launched this engagement strategy and how it has impacted the company as a whole. She also talks about the next steps Redwood is taking to continue building on the success of this strategy. As always, if you have a topic you would like to see covered in a future episode of MDM Executive Briefing, or if you would like to be featured, please contact us at editor@mdm.com. Thank you and enjoy.
I'm Janelle Selden-Holtmeyer, editor of Modern Distribution Management and MDM.com. And today, I'm talking with Toby Mack, President and CEO of the Energy Equipment and Infrastructure Alliance. Hi, Toby. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Janelle.
So, what is the EEIA?
Well, Energy Equipment and Infrastructure Alliance is a trade association that was formed in 2012 to represent the shale energy supply chain. And what I mean by that is the whole value chain directly underneath the shale oil and gas exploration and production industry that supplies material and services and equipment and construction to the industries. We bill ourselves as the shale energy supply chain, and we formed it because there was a very significant void in advocacy for shale oil and gas. As you know, there's a fairly substantial debate in the public and at various levels of government about whether we should be developing our shale oil and gas. And to be clear, shale oil and gas is the oil and gas that is produced by hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling. And so there is some controversy over that practice, particularly by folks, in my opinion, who don't think we should be aggressively developing shale oil and gas. So our organization was formed to roll up, if you will, all of the different industries that have a piece of that supply chain into one voice, give it a voice, and then put it on the policy map in a major way. Each individual association has a slice of its organizations. Each individual industry has a slice of its members that serve this market or whose businesses are in part serving this market, but it was never, it was fragmented. It wasn't really consolidated into one voice. So that's why we did it, and it's turning out to be a pretty important piece of the economic picture.
Well, I know shale oil is in the news all the time recently, so it can definitely be a hot topic. But why is this so important for manufacturers and distributors?
Well, because the supply chain is very, very significantly made up of manufacturers and distributors. When you look at the spectrum of products and industries that are in the supply chain, let me just go down through a few of them to give you a sense. You have engines and power equipment, you have pumps and compressors, you have material handling equipment, you have oil and gas field manufacturing, you have machinery and equipment that are provided by wholesalers. You have wholesale chemical product suppliers. You have wholesale building material suppliers. You have wholesale metal service center suppliers, and then all of the iron and steel, fabricated pipe, aluminum products that go into the machinery and equipment that is used in development. Boilers and heat exchangers, tanks, valves, cutting tools, welding equipment, and on and on. It's a very, very substantial list of both manufacturer and distributor industries that are part of, not every company in those industries is in this market, but a very substantial slice of them are, and it's an important driver of their markets.
Well, as you've already mentioned, a lot of people disagree on how this development should go about, but what are EEIA's top priorities?
To be clear, we advocate an energy policy at the national level that includes all forms of energy. So we're not trying to make this a zero-sum game, gas wins, coal loses, or anything like that at all. We think we need all forms of energy. So number one, we advocate for efficient and effective production and consumption of all forms, but it's our belief that the market should decide, how much coal is burned and how much gas is burned for power generation, for example, and that not be driven by some ideological construct about what's good and what's bad for the country's energy inventory and so forth. So we think all forms of energy are necessary. We also think that the states are better positioned and better able to regulate oil and gas production within their borders, rather than having EPA or some other agency like Department of Energy or Department of Interior trying to regulate shale oil and gas production throughout the country. The states are very, very much closer to the conditions in their own states. They understand the water resource issues. They understand the geology. They understand the hydrology. They understand climate and other issues. So they're better positioned to regulate than the federal government. So we advocate for state-based regulation. We also advocate for such things as exports of both natural gas and crude oil. We don't think that it makes sense when we have this abundance of both oil and natural gas as we do now, that we should be distorting markets by arbitrarily saying we shouldn't export the products of these industries. So that's another important policy priority for us. Another one is that we advocate better access to the oil and gas resources that exist on public lands. Most of the American West is publicly owned or federally owned land, and the process of getting permits to develop resources on those lands is tremendously more complicated, time-consuming, and expensive than it is to get the ability to develop oil and gas on privately owned land. And so we think that if the federal government were to remove some of those barriers, that America could substantially increase its energy production beyond what it already is, which is very substantial. So those are a few of our priorities. We also, in the context of the overall kind of global debate on tax reform, we want to make sure that the tax code writers don't look at the energy industry as kind of a piggy bank of wealth to dip into to fund other priorities. And so we think that oil and gas development should be on the same playing field with the rest of business taxation. So that's a priority as well.
Just a few moments ago, you talked about how many different areas this type of policy impacts, but who is already involved in the process with EEIA, and how can they get involved with doing more?
The exploration and production and pipeline sectors of the energy industry are very, very well represented, both in Washington and at state and local levels. And so advocacy for sound energy policy is being undertaken and has been undertaken for years by trade associations that represent the oil and gas producers, and so and the pipeline operators. But what we add to this debate is that when you look at the scale of the supply chain, and we've done this now, and I'll describe it in just a minute how, the supply chain actually is roughly a third of all the jobs and economic output in the entire energy value chain. If you look at the energy value chain, and you can almost divide it into thirds, the upstream or production third is the folks that actually produce the oil and gas, and then you have the supply chain, which are all of the companies involved in supporting oil and gas production. And then the third, if you will, is the induced economic impacts. What happens throughout the economy, for example, in retail and in housing and in hospitality and down through the entire economy, that's buoyed by a lot of new income going into spending streams into the economy. And so when you look at the total economic impact of oil and gas, you look at it in the three roughly equal sectors. It helps you understand the scale. And so that middle third, it really never until the EIA had a role in advocating for that which drives its market. So that's at the top level. That's why it's important. But why should individual companies care and get involved? Because it is one of their, if they're in this market, if they're in a producing state, for example, where there are 16 major oil and gas producing states in the country, and so if they're in one of those states, clearly they understand the degree to which their businesses are driven by oil and gas activity, and if they're in that market, they know it. But beyond just the producing states, just about every state in the Union has productive capacity and economic activity that supports oil and gas development, even though that may occur somewhere else. For example, and a good example is the state of Illinois, which is home to Caterpillar and Deere and a number of other construction equipment manufacturers that are building equipment that then gets shipped off to applications in oil and gas development. So it really has a full-scale impact throughout the United States. And so if you're a business, a distributor or a manufacturer, and you're producing or selling products that serve this market, it serves you importantly well to be part of the voice that is advocating for the continued robust development and growth of that market, because that's going to drive your business higher. So that's very simply what everybody's stake is in this that's in the supply chain.
So how exactly is the access to shale energy and just the broad range of where it exists changing the energy market in the U.S. today?
It's just been an astonishing story, Janelle. Let's take crude oil from shale as our first example. Since 2010, and projected through the end of 2014, we will have added 4 million barrels a day of crude oil production to America's energy crude oil total output. Keep in mind that there's a lot of conventional crude oil production that comes from the reservoir-based resources that have always existed in traditional producing states like Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana, but just the addition of all the shale oil that's coming from hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling has added by itself 4 million barrels a day to America's crude oil output. Now, to put that in perspective, that is, first of all, it has driven our oil and liquids productions up to record levels. 10 years ago, everybody was fretting about, the declining production curves for traditional U.S. oil production would basically be going down and down and down, ad infinitum. And now that's suddenly reversed. The 4 million barrels that have come back on the market, and keep in mind this adds to the global market as well, which is how the oil and gas market operates, that is actually replacing as much production as occurs in just about anywhere in OPEC. It's the 4 million barrels is far above what's produced by Venezuela, which is just under 3. It's actually more incremental new crude oil production than is produced anywhere in the world except for Saudi Arabia and Russia and China, and it's about to overtake Chinese oil production. So it's had this tremendous impact of stabilizing global oil markets, were it not for this new production, and keep in mind this is going to keep growing roughly at the rate of 1 million barrels per day per year, when you have crises such as we do now in Iraq, which could threaten their productive capacity. We've seen Libyan productive capacity decline dramatically. We've seen Iran's oil taken off the global market because of sanctions. We've seen problems in Angola and elsewhere in Africa. And so what all this new production has done is it stabilized, at least for now, the global price of crude oil. I mean, people need to understand that is one of the benefits of America's resurgent oil production. It has really helped to stabilize the global price of oil, which benefits all consumers and manufacturers. By the way, the other thing that this is doing for manufacturers, if your manufacturing process employs any kind of a petrochemical feedstock, for example, if you're making any kind of plastics or any other thing like fertilizer that requires petrochemical feedstocks, this is now you have a tremendous competitive global advantage in the United States because the price of those feedstocks is roughly a third of what they are in Asia and Europe. And so now suddenly, and this is all within the past few years, American manufacturing energy inputs, whether they be energy for feedstocks or energy to power their processes, suddenly we have this enormous global competitive advantage that just showed up. So there's another side benefit to the manufacturing community. Of course, that plays down through wholesale distribution as well.
If companies want to get more information or get more involved in what EEIA is doing, how can they go about doing that?
Well, they could start by contacting me, and I would be most happy and forthcoming with as much information. It depends on where they are in this value chain, whether they're in manufacturing or in distribution. One of the things that we're doing that I didn't mention previously is that we are about to release a major economic impact study. About a year ago, and this has been going on for a year, we trained IHS Global Insight, which is a leading research firm to study the economic impact of shale oil and gas. And so we're about to produce a tremendously granular economic impact study that will show, and state by state by state and industry by industry, we actually are measuring about 60 different industrial sectors, sector by sector, state by state, and within each state, what that sector accounts for in terms of gross economic output, in other words, dollar output of the industry, employment, and labor income. And so this is going to add a tremendous amount of knowledge about the industry, and it's not going to be just a snapshot. It's going to be a forecast going forward annually from 2014 through 2025. So firms that are part of EEIA will have access to that planning data.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of information still to be brought out. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Toby.
Well, thank you, Janelle. I appreciate it, and I look forward to helping any of your readers or listeners that would like more information. And if people want to understand how best to try to position themselves for this business if they're not yet in it, for example, I'd be also happy to share any knowledge that I have that would help them do that.
Well, great. Well, have a great day.
Thank you very much. You too.
And now for 7 Minutes With, which will feature a short interview each month with the leader of a distribution or manufacturing company.
I'm Janelle Stelton-Holtmeyer, editor of Modern Distribution Management, and today I'm talking with Angela Rodenberg, Marketing Director for Vancouver, British Columbia-based Redwood Plastics. Redwood Plastics has 7 branches across North America and provides custom plastic components to customers across a wide range of industries. Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm great.
How has business been?
Business has been really great. It's been a very interesting last few years with obviously a lot of changes in the marketplace, but that also has led to a lot of opportunities for us to differentiate ourselves.
Are there any certain areas where you're seeing more strength? I know you guys will operate across a wide range of industries.
Yeah, we operate under a very wide range of industries. There's about 40 to 50 different industry classes that we've sort of categorized for ourselves. We see a lot of growth lately with the mining sector, oil and gas, and sawmilling is actually coming back a little bit for us as well.
So what's the outlook for the rest of 2014?
Right now, we're concentrating a lot on oil and gas. We have a oil and gas GPS show coming up next month in Calgary, Alberta. We also have some new product lines that we are trying to develop with different industries as well, wastewater and things like that. Concentrating on safety, a lot of maintenance type projects that help reduce costs and increase production as well.
So Redwood Plastics was selected as one of our 2014 market movers this year, so congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
The reason we selected Redwood Plastics was because of its initiatives around increasing engagement and conversion through digital platforms. Could you talk a little bit about what Redwood has been doing in this area?
So over the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, we've really tried to embrace all of the opportunities available on an online platform and all the different technology applications and social media and having a mobile site, all those kinds of things, and grasping at all those opportunities those lay before us. So we've invested a lot in our website, on SEO and SEM. We do a lot of engagement on social media platforms and really try to give a place for our customers to find more information about our products and engage with our salespeople and just really open up the lines of communication in as many ways as we possibly can.
So what has the impact of that been?
The impact has been great. We've just recently opened up a department where we contact our customers strictly using online platforms. So we've got 2 people that are in that sales department now where they use online chat and they speak to people with social media platforms. We do a lot of proactive selling instead of just waiting for the phone ring or having to depend on outside salespeople, which is obviously costly. We have people on the inside that are actively searching for new customers and new opportunities that way, which has led to that department growing substantially over the last couple years. With our future plans as well, we just expect that to develop and grow.
What were some of the drivers?
I think the biggest reason was because we just saw an opportunity to do to it that a lot of our competition wasn't embracing. And because we're a smaller company in comparison to a lot of the plastics distribution companies, we really have to differentiate ourselves and provide a different value to the customers that we deal with. And we do have extensive knowledge of a variety of different applications and how to use different plastic grades and different applications and what plastics might be better suited to increase the product life and things like that. We just kind of saw an opportunity for us to engage our customers more and provide that information and be that go-to company when someone's having trouble.
So what's the next step for Redwood Plastics in this area?
We are actually in the process of building an e-commerce site, which has been an extensive project for us over the last few months, and we're hoping to launch that probably by the end of this year. So that will give just another opportunity for our customers to be able to ask more questions and engage us online and be able to quickly and efficiently order what they need, but also have the same sales support that they would from an outside salesperson with an online chat and being able to have video conferencing and stuff like that to be able to engage with a broader audience and people that are further away, but still being able to have a relationship with those people.
So I know a lot of distributors recently have been really focused on that e-commerce platform, even much more so than a lot of the social media or digital conversations. Why did Redwood Plastics decide to focus on that online digital conversation before launching the e-commerce platform?
Well, we tried an e-commerce platform probably about 5 years ago on a really small scale. To be honest, we really didn't do it properly. We didn't go all in and do our research at the forefront. So we saw an opportunity to do a lot of the conversations and SEO and just gain the searchability results first from an online standpoint that way and do a lot of engagement with social media and things like that. it does have a lot of people coming to us with questions. But with the e-commerce thing, we've gone back, done a lot of research over the past year, and we really want to do it properly. We don't want to just be an online inventory store. With the e-commerce site, we're going to be offering something a little bit different and being able to have our clients being able to customize products and be able to upload drawings and do things just a little bit differently than just stock shapes.
So why is it so important for distributors to be looking at these types of initiatives today?
I think there's a huge opportunity with the way that people are looking for information. If you look at the growth of how people use their phones, how people communicate, how people are searching for information, and if you don't seize that opportunity, I think people are really missing out on a large audience, especially as time goes by and generations change. And if you're not there, people are going to have to play catch up very quickly.
So this last question is one that we ask everybody we feature in this segment, and that's, what keeps you awake at night?
I think what keeps me up at night in regards to distribution and manufacturing itself is just being able to stay afloat when there's so many big players out there now, and you really have to think about your audience and your customers and really providing a value and differentiating yourself so that you're not eaten up by the bigger guys. And I feel like there's going to be this change that's going to happen where a lot of the smaller companies are going to disappear, which is sort of unfortunate because when it comes to buying small amounts and doing really custom products, I think those are going to end up becoming really expensive if all that ends up existing is the really large companies that are really just interested in large volume and not providing that small quantity, really personalized attention that some people need.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much.